Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shubin Chandna.
And I'm Diksha Bisla. And on the show today, Russia and Ukraine have agreed to halt military strikes in the Black Sea and on energy sites during talks brokered by the United States.
And while we bring you the latest on that, also on the show is US National Security Advisor Mike Waltz says he takes responsibility for accidentally adding a journalist to a group chat in which top American officials discussed impending strikes in Yemen. There's been mounting drama surrounding those leaks. We'll bring you the latest on that as well. This is World DNA. Let's start with the headlines.
Russia and Ukraine agree to halt military strikes in the Black Sea and on energy sites during talks brokered by the United States. Washington offers to ease pressure on agricultural exports as a first concrete incentive to Moscow.
US National Security Advisor Mike Waltz takes full responsibility for accidentally adding a journalist to a group chat in which top American officials discussed strikes against the Houthis.
US Vice President J.D. Vance says he will join wife Usha on Greenland visit. They will visit a US military base on Friday to receive briefing on Arctic security issues.
Anti-government protests in Istanbul continue against the jailing of the city's mayor. US top diplomat Marco Rubio expresses concerns over recent arrests and protests in a meeting with Turkish Foreign Minister.
South Korea vows full-scale national response after at least 18 people killed in wildfires. Acting president says wildfires have caused unprecedented damage and exceeded all prediction models.
A US judge set a June 23rd trial date for Boeing's criminal fraud case tied to the fatal 737 MAX crashes. And this comes as Boeing seeks to withdraw a prior plea deal that included a fine and safety reforms.
Double Olympic champion Jakob Ingebrigtsen testifies against his father in a Norwegian court. The middle-distance runner describes his childhood as being filled with fear and manipulation. Well, Russia and Ukraine have agreed to halt military strikes in the Black Sea and on energy sites during talks brokered by the United States, which offer to ease pressure on agricultural exports.
Now, as a first concrete incentive to Moscow, the United States said that it has made separate agreements with both Ukraine and Russia to ensure safe navigation in the Black Sea and to implement a ban on strikes against energy facilities in the two countries, with Washington agreeing to lift some sanctions against Moscow in its latest step towards endorsing Russia's positions.
It sounds like you made some progress on a Black Sea ceasefire. Could you update us on that? What happens now?
We're in deep discussions with Russia and Ukraine, and I would say it's going well, but it's a situation we should have never had to even think about. Should have never happened.
While Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that the US and Ukraine agreed that there can be a maritime ceasefire with Russia after talks with the US in Saudi Arabia.
First of all, we agreed that there can be a maritime ceasefire and free navigation. You, in principle, know this already. In addition to what is briefly formulated in the statement, you are going to read it, we are grateful to the American side for this result.
However, Zelensky sounded a pessimistic note in his nightly video address on whether Russia would observe the partial ceasefire conditions proposed by the US. Listen to this.
Ми в Україні будемо все робити, щоб домовленості.
We in Ukraine will do everything to make the agreements work and so that there are no strikes. But the Russians must know and must realize, if they strike, they will receive a strong response, and the responsibility will be on them.
Сильну відповідь. І відповідальність буде на них.
The Kremlin, however, said that the agreement to halt strikes on the Black Sea could come into force only after the lifting of restrictions on its agriculture sector.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Moscow is open to the revival of an agreement to ensure safe transit in the Black Sea, but warned that Russian interests must be protected.
И за то, чтобы рассмотреть пути.
We will need clear guarantees. Given the sad experience of agreements with Kyiv, guarantees can only be the result of an order from Washington to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and his team to do exactly this. It seems to me that our American partners have taken this signal.
В качестве приоритета обсуждали в Эр-Рияде.
Now, with President Donald Trump pushing for a rapid end to the war that has killed tens of thousands of people, U.S. negotiators shuttled separately over 3 days in the Saudi capital Riyadh between delegations from Ukraine and Russia.
The talks also discussed bringing in third parties to oversee a future truce. Turkey, which has maintained ties with both sides, could monitor the situation of the Black Sea, and that a Middle Eastern nation could supervise the energy agreement.
And for more on this, we're now being joined live by Dov Zakhaim from Washington, D.C. He's a former Under-Secretary of Defense in George Washington Bush administration and is currently the Senior Advisor at Center for Strategic and International Studies. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Zakhaim.
Thank you.
Well, let me begin by saying that this sounds like real progress, the ceasing of the war in the Black Sea. But what we have seen in the lead up to this is that the relationship between both the delegations have been quite delicate, and with Russia asking for the sanctions to be lifted and Ukraine accusing Moscow of twisting the deal, how much do you think is going to actually be implemented, and what? Right.
Well, I think that the deal will go through. Remember, it's only a partial deal. The key issue is what happens on the ground, and in the Black Sea, you remember, as you earlier said, there already has been an agreement, and then it fell apart. So the United States is back, putting that agreement back together. Mr. Putin wants some sanctions to be lifted first. My guess is we'll probably do some of that, and this deal will go through, just like the agreement not to hit each other's infrastructure and energy facilities. But that's not where the war is really going to be decided. It is on the ground. The Russians have pushed the Ukrainians pretty much out of the Kursk region, and Mr. Putin has shown no indication that he's going to stop his people from fighting on the ground. As you recall, the original American-Ukrainian statement called on Russia for a 30-day truce. There were no partial agreements. So, yes, there's progress. That's certainly to be welcomed, but it is far from what the Americans, my country, and Ukraine had originally announced in their statement.
Mr. Zakhaim, that kind of brings me where I wanted to, go next in terms of your thoughts on when is the earliest you feel land and assets will be on the discussion table, because that's something that Trump mentioned about over a week ago, that's what he's hoping to discuss, but that's nowhere on the cards at least yet.
Well, no, and the real question is Putin going to be straight with Trump? It's not at all clear that Putin is going to be straight with him. I think Putin, the longtime KGB person who is still acting like a KGB person, probably thinks he can outsmart Trump. That's a very dangerous game, because if Mr. Trump thinks somebody's trying to outsmart him, he will hit back very, very hard.
So when you say outsmart him, you mean agree and then do something else on the back? If you can elaborate on what you mean?
Well, either agree and go back on it, or more likely continue to stall. Putin wants to stall for as long as he can to gain back as much territory as he can, to make it virtually impossible for Ukraine to demand anything like the status quo ante in 2014. Now, it's already pretty much improbable that he'll get what he wants, that is to say, Zelensky, but this makes it just much, much harder the longer it goes on the ground for Ukraine to have any kind of position of strength in the negotiation. What's been agreed to now has essentially been Ukraine giving in to the United States and Russia agreeing because it's getting something as well. But when you talk about territory, that can only come if Ukraine gives way, and the issue is, how much way does it have to give?
Right, Mr. Sakaim, and as you early mentioned that that Putin has been a little shaky on his resolve, and well, Zelensky has anticipated that. The deals have fallen apart quite immediately in the past as well. And now that Zelensky has requested the US administration to foresee in case the ceasefire reaches an impasse again. So how is the United States slated to take that into implementation as well?
Well, look, Zelensky wants us to help bail him out. One thing, by the way, we've done is, as you recall, we have once again begun to supply Zelensky and Ukraine with both intelligence and arms. So that strengthens his hand somewhat. The British and the French have said that they will put peacekeepers on the ground if there's a ceasefire. That strengthens Zelensky's hand somewhat. And finally, the deal that the United States will get a piece of the rare earth and minerals that can be exploited in Ukraine means that Americans will be on the ground. So there are already certain guarantees. Whether that is sufficient for Zelensky is questionable. And what I think is certainly clear is that Putin simply is not ready, at this stage at least, to sit down and negotiate about boundaries simply because his people are advancing. Maybe not as quickly as he would like, but they are advancing. And I think he will continue to stall, and Trump will continue to put the pressure on. And the question then is, how long can Putin stall before Trump loses his temper and says, I'm sick and tired of your delays when I have asked you to finally sit down and negotiate seriously about what goes on the ground?
Another question that comes, of course, from that is, even if he does stall further, what options does the US really have? They'll have to get them to the negotiating table, and that only seems, but we'll need to discuss that another time. Dr. Zakhem, thank you so much for joining us here on the show. This is World DNA, and always a pleasure having you here with us. All right, from one war front to the other, let's move to West Asia next. Palestinians are evacuating from northern Gaza as Israel presses its renewed bombardment and ground operations.
Well, this after the Israeli military issued evacuation orders. Palestinians were seen fleeing with their belongings from Gaza's Jabaliya, on foot, in vehicles and on animal-led carts. The Israeli army has ordered residents in all northern border towns to evacuate, saying Palestinian rockets had been fired at Israel from the area.
In the first displacement, when I was displaced, my teeth fell out and my leg was broken. Thank God, we still faith. If only there were Arab countries to stand with us and let these people live like humans. We accepted the minimum, hunger and thirst, and despite this, our youth are being killed and dying, and we only say, thank God, but just let us stay in our country.
Today, from displacement to displacement, we will remain in the Gaza Strip, without stability. From Jabalia camp, we are being displaced. Where will we go? No schools remain where we can stay, and there are no homes left. Everything is a target. Tonight, innocent people were hit by a rocket. What fault of this is ours? What is our fault in this war?
Israel resumed intense airstrikes across Gaza a week ago after talks on extending a ceasefire with Hamas reached an impasse. On Tuesday, Israeli strikes across Gaza killed at least 23 Palestinians, according to local health officials.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to start meeting candidates to replace Shin Bet chief Ronen Bar. Well, this comes after the Supreme Court rejected an attempt to prevent the start of the process to appoint a new chief for the intelligence agency.
The ruling was against an appeal made by the Israeli Attorney General, who instructed the government that it could not appoint a new security chief after the Supreme Court suspended Bar's sacking.
Well, the government had announced its intention to fire Bar last week, with Netanyahu saying he did not have confidence in the security chief. However, the top court blocked the sacking after several appeals and will hold a hearing on the case on April 8th.
Netanyahu's attempts to dismiss Ronen Bar have brought thousands of Israelis out onto the streets in protest. Dozens of protesters were demonstrating outside Israel's parliament, the Knesset, and they were seen being forcefully removed from the site by security forces.
Dozens of Israelis also gathered near the Prime Minister's residence in Jerusalem. Protesters say it's concerning and unprecedented that the government does not listen to the law. Demonstrations have also been intensified by the resumption of airstrikes in Gaza this week.
U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz says he takes responsibility for mistakenly adding a journalist to a group chat in which top American officials were discussing impending strikes in Yemen.
Well, this as President Donald Trump voiced his support for Waltz even as the administration sought to contain the fallout of the massive security leak.
Now, in his first interview since the security breach story broke out, Waltz told Fox News that he built the group and it is his job to make sure everything is coordinated. He added that he does not personally know Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, who was added to the chat.
I don't know this guy. I know him by his horrible reputation, and he really is the bottom scum of journalists. And I know him in the sense that he hates the president, but I don't text him. He wasn't on my phone. Look, I take full responsibility. I built the group. My job is to make sure everything's coordinated.
But how did that number? I mean, I don't mean to be pedantic here, but how did the number?
Have you ever had somebody's contact that shows their name, and then you have somebody else's number there?
I never make those mistakes.
President Donald Trump has said that there was no classified information disclosed in the chat, adding that he did not think Waltz should apologize.
These efforts, as Director Radcliffe testified today.
No, I don't think he should apologize. I think he's doing his best. It's equipment and technology that's not perfect, and probably he won't be using it again, at least not in the very near future.
Trump added that his administration would look into the use of Signal, which is the app where the chat was hosted. He also dialed up his criticism of The Atlantic magazine's editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, adding that nobody cares about the story.
App that a lot of people use, and somebody got on. I mean, happened to know the guy's a total sleazebag. The Atlantic is a failed magazine. Does very, very poorly. Nobody gives a damn about it. This gives it a little bit of a shot. And I will tell you this, that they've made up more stories, and they're just a failing magazine. The public understands it.
On Tuesday, top U.S. intelligence officials faced heated questions over the security breach. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard was questioned on whether she was part of the group chat where classified information was leaked. Listen to this heated exchange.
So, Director Gabbard, did you participate in the group chat with Secretary of Defense and other Trump senior officials discussing the Yemen war plans?
Senator, I don't want to get into the specifics.
Ma'am, were you on? You're not going to be willing to address. So you're not. Are you denying? Matt, will you answer my question, ma'am? You were not TG on this group chat.
I'm not going to get into the specifics.
So you refuse to acknowledge whether you were on this group chat.
Senator, I'm not going to get into the specifics.
Why are you going to get into the specifics? Is it because it's all classified?
Because this is currently under review by the National Security
Because it's
Council.
all classified? If it's not classified, share the text now.
The Intel head declined to tell Senate committee whether she was using the private phone during Signal chat. However, the one thing that Gabbard did say that was that no classified information was shared on that group.
But when U.S. Senator and Vice Chairman of the committee, Mark Warner, asked the same question to CIA Director John Ratcliffe, he confirmed that he was on the Houthi Signal group chat. However, later in the hearing, Ratcliffe said that the group chat communication in which a journalist was included was not a mistake.
Director Radcliffe, were you on the group chat?
Senator, I was on a Signal messaging group.
So you were the John Ratcliffe on that chat?
I was.
Thank you. Thank you.
The Senate hearing was overshadowed by the case of the Intel leak after editor-in-chief of The Atlantic wrote a detailed piece on how the Trump administration added him to a group on the messenger app, Signal, and shared detailed war plans for strikes on Yemen's Houthis.
Goldberg went on to elaborate how he knew about the March 15 strikes in Yemen. This after U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth sent details of the war plan, including information on targets, the timing of the strikes, and ammunition used.
Now, the group on Signal, where Atlantic editor-in-chief Goldberg was added, was called Houthi PC Small Group. The chat included several high-profile leaders, including Vice President J.D. Vance, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, and several other senior National Security Council officials.
Well, several questions have been raised on the credibility of the administration's senior-most leadership after the high-risk faux pas. Well, conversations of the League also revolve around how the use of a messenger application to convey classified information breaks the law.
And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani sent us this report from New York.
At a tense Senate Intelligence Committee hearing on Tuesday, top Trump officials, including DNI Tulsi Gabbard and CIA Director John Ratcliffe, denied that classified information was leaked in a private Signal group chat discussing a Yemen military strike. Now, the controversy erupted after it was revealed that journalist Jeffrey Goldberg was mistakenly added to the chat, where Vice President J.D. Vance and other top national security officials discussed possibly sensitive details like timing, targets, and weapon systems. Democrats slammed the administration's handling of the incident, calling it sloppy and, quote, incompetent. Some even called for resignations. While Republicans did admit that the breach was serious, they also praised that no classified information was leaked. U.S. President Donald Trump, for his part, defended National Security Advisor Michael Waltz, ultimately blaming a staff error. Now, although officials insist that no classified information was shared, critics note the information could still fall under the Espionage Act, which protects national defense information even if it's not formally classified. And so we wait. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
All right, and moving on, unrest continued in Turkey as anti-government protests entered the seventh night.
Large crowds of people gathered to show their displeasure against the jailing of Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu, one of the biggest opposition rivals to President Erdogan.
Well, from Istanbul to Ankara, protests raised slogans and waved Turkish flags. Police was seen dispersing them with water cannons.
At one of the demonstrations, İmamoğlu's party announced it will launch its election campaign with a rally on the 29th of March for presidential candidate İmamoğlu. Today, the CHP Majority Council will elect an acting mayor.
They have not left any space in prisons by imprisoning journalists and those who want democracy. Shame on this regime.
The continued protests pose a potential bind for President Erdogan, who had called them street terrorists.
I invite everyone to know their limits, maintain moderation, and not to cross the line between seeking rights and insult and vandalism.
The 53-year-old Istanbul mayor was arrested on the 19th of March on corruption charges, seen as the main challenger to Erdogan's 22-year rule in Turkey. His arrest has been widely viewed as politically motivated, sparking protests across the country. All right, viewers, it's time now for a quick break. Don't go anywhere. Lots more on the other side when we get back. At least 18 people have been killed and thousands of others have been evacuated as wildfires continue to rage in South Korea. We'll bring you a full report on that.
Also on the other side, the youth in Kashmir are heading to tattoo parlors not to get tattoos, but to remove them. Why? We get you the details on the other side.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Unlocking the future of finance.
Dive into the world of tokenization with me
as we yield the power of tokenization.
Discover the future of
ownership, where I decode, demystify tokenization for you.
Empowering the tokenized revolution.
Get ready to dive for an in-depth look at tokenization.
Busting the myths around tokenization.
Catch me on Token Money Magnet.
Token Money Magnet.
Token Money Magnet.
Token Money Magnet.
Token Money Magnet only on WION.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of. A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA. Join the conversation.
The scenes of jubilant soldiers in Khartoum mark a significant advance in an offensive that has seen Sudan's army seize back swathes of territory in recent months. They have retaken the presidential palace and believe they are on course to win back the rest of the capital. Climate change is melting the huge ice blocks off of Africa's second highest mountain. Mount Kenya is slowly transforming from a landscape of snow and ice to brown rock. And find out why Kirsty Coventry's powerful role in sport as a 10th International Olympic Committee president is both groundbreaking and controversial. Wild of Africa at these times on WION World is One.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Deeksha and I'm Shivan. Lots more to discuss on this side of the show as well. Let's start with that next.
South Korea says it will deploy all available national resources to fight the country's worst ever wildfires. At least 18 people have been killed so far after more than a dozen different blazes broke out over the weekend.
Protest erupts in Kathmandu over sacking of the chief of Nepal Electricity Authority. Kulman Ghising's removal comes after months of standoff with the government, primarily over recovering unpaid dues from companies and signing an energy deal with India.
India and China discuss resumption of cross-border cooperation, including on trans-border rivers and Kailash Mansarovar pilgrimage. The meeting in Beijing was part of efforts to normalize bilateral relations.
Israeli police releases Palestinian filmmaker Hamdan Balal. The Oscar-winning documentary was detained a day earlier for allegedly hurling rocks following what activists described as an attack by settlers in the occupied West Bank.
Moscow says an agreement announced by the US on Russia and Ukraine halting strikes in the Black Sea could only come into force after the lifting of restrictions on Russian agriculture exports.
Look, I take full responsibility. I built the group. My job is to make sure everything's coordinated.
But how did that
execute.
Mr. President, are you going to change any of the practices that
U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz takes full responsibility for accidentally adding a journalist to a group chat in which top American officials discussed strikes against the Houthi rebels.
US Vice President J.D. Vance says he will join wife Usha on Greenland visit. They will visit a US military base on Friday to receive briefing on Arctic security issues.
U.S. consumer confidence plunges to a 4-year low in March amid rising fears of a recession and inflation driven by tariffs. The Conference Board's expectations index hit a 12-year low, signaling economic uncertainty.
Double Olympic champion Jakob Ingebrigtsen testifies against his father in a Norwegian court. The middle distance runner describes his childhood as being filled with fear and manipulation. South Korea says it will deploy all available national resources to fight the country's worst ever wildfires.
The deadly wildfires have left at least 18 people dead and led to evacuations of thousands in the southeastern region. Among the buildings razed in the wildfire include an 1,000-year-old Buddhist temple that now lies in ruins.
From local landmarks, prisons and even temples, all have faced the fury of the wildfires in the southeast region. Visuals have surfaced from the region show rubbles and ash of one of the burnt down temples. While a helicopter is seen spraying water at a temple, some personnel are seen covering the Buddha statue with flame-resistant fabric to protect it from the fire at a nearby mountain. Now, 2 days earlier, the raging wildfire burned down the temple that was earnestly being protected by the devotees and personnel alike.
This temple is an important and historic temple where many masters and believers practice their hearts and receive comfort as it descends through over 1300 years. It is a place of comfort for many people, but I am very afraid that it may disappear. City of Andong, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, has issued an alert to its residents to evacuate to safe areas. The authorities designated the affected southeast regions as special disaster zones. Additionally, about 2,600 inmates from 4 prisons are being evacuated in Cheongsong County due to the wildfires. India and China have reviewed the situation along the line of actual control, LAC. The two nations have agreed on the early resumption of cross-border cooperation and exchanges.
Well, including on trans-border rivers and Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. Well, representatives from India and China held a high-level meeting in Beijing, where both sides discussed the boundary issue in great detail. This was the 33rd meeting of the Working Mechanism for Consultation and Coordination on India-China Border Affairs.
After the meeting, the Ministry of External Affairs said that discussions were held in a positive and constructive atmosphere, and both sides comprehensively reviewed the situation along the line of actual control. It further said that the two sides explored various measures to give effect to the decisions taken during the 23rd meeting of the special representatives on the boundary question that was held in Beijing in December.
Well, the next meeting of the special representatives is set to be held in Delhi this year, and Beijing and New Delhi assured each other of making substantial preparations for the same. At the meeting, India and China also agreed to maintain and strengthen both diplomatic and military mechanisms in place to address issues along the LAC.
Since October of last year, when Prime Minister Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping met on the sidelines of the BRICS summit in Kazan, there have been efforts by both countries to return to the pre-2020 situation along the LAC in order to improve India-China ties.
And in Jammu and Kashmir Valley, youngsters have been flocking in large numbers to get their tattoos removed. But what is driving these youngsters to get their tattoos reflecting their choices and identities removed? Take a look at this special report.
In Srinagar, the Valley Care Tattoo Removing Clinic has become a hub for the youth these days. Hundreds of youngsters have been flocking the clinic every day to get their tattoos removed. Bazit Bashir, a tattoo removal artist in Srinagar, has removed over 100,000 tattoos of youth. The tattoo removing artist says that most of these youngsters are either scared to wear rifle tattoos or do not want to hurt religious sentiments. In Kashmir Valley, those with arms and ammunition tattoos come under the radar of security forces. This is one of the many reasons for getting these tattoos removed. Failed relations and even religion are some of the factors leading to rise in tattoo removal cases.
I started this campaign to remove tattoos for free of cost, as I knew these youngsters would not be able to pay for it. After I got a huge rush of people, I kept a minimal charge of 100 rupees. The youngsters who make these tattoos realize it much later that it's not permitted in our religion. Since the time I started, I have removed tattoos of over 1 lakh people.
In Kashmir, getting inked is considered a taboo. This is one of the reasons that not one person coming to get tattoos removed wants to speak on camera. The Islamic scholars and imams have categorically called tattoo making is prohibited in Islam. These scholars are known to be giving sermons about not inked on any part of the body.
Islam is a pious religion, and all those things that take you away from it, like making tattoos. This trend not only is against the religion, but also leads to so many health issues. People with tattoos cannot pray in the mosques as well. People, and especially parents, should keep children away from it. All Muslims should stay away from these things.
It's the tattoo removal artists and not tattoo artists who are getting more clients in the valley these days.
Basit has managed to remove over 100,000 tattoos since the time he started. Boys and girls have been flocking his clinic in huge numbers to get their tattoos removed. And Basit says that most of these removals are either of failed love affairs or AK-47 rifles. With video journalist Irfan, Idris Loan for WION World is One.
The Red Sea is one of the world's most critical trade routes connecting Asia and Europe through the Suez Canal.
It handles 12% of global trade and 40% of all container traffic. However, Houthi rebels' attacks on commercial vessels have severely disrupted shipping.
Now, major firms are avoiding this route altogether, forcing ships to reroute around Africa's Cape of Good Hope, which is a much longer route, which makes things more expensive. The crisis has made a paradoxical effect on the shipping industry. While disruptions have increased costs, they have also boosted profits. Shipping companies, which invested in new fleets during the pandemic boom, have benefited from higher freight rates due to reduced capacity. Maersk, for example, indicated that extended Red Sea closures could drive higher earnings in 2024.
Well, oil and gas shipments have also been affected. Around 6.2 million barrels of crude oil and petroleum products transit through the route daily. By early 2024, southbound oil flows through the Suez Canal had dropped by half. While liquefied natural gas shipments to Europe also declined, triggering price fluctuations in energy market. Insurance costs have surged as well. Fair risk premiums for vessels using the Red Sea rose to as high as 2%, adding millions to expenses per voyage. Cargo insurance rates have also spiked, making the Suez route financially unviable for many shipping lines.
The long-term impact of Red Sea disruptions remains uncertain. Shipping firms insist they will not return until either a peace settlement is reached or the Houthis' military capabilities are neutralized. Experts argue that airstrikes alone may not be enough to secure the route.
Meanwhile, supply chains are adjusting. Global importers have absorbed rising freight costs, but prolonged instability could fuel inflation. European businesses heavily reliant on Red Sea trade face delays and higher shipping costs, affecting inventory planning and production. The crisis has environmental consequences as well. Rerouted ships traveling up to 60% farther are burning more fuel, increasing carbon emission by an estimated 40% per voyage. With no immediate resolution in sight, global trade continues to navigate uncertainty. Let us now take a look at the developments from the world of technology.
Bangladesh's interim leader Mohammad Yunus said that the country is on track to secure a commercial deal with Starlink in the next 3 months. Yunus, who has led Bangladesh's government since the ouster of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina last year, said that the deal would provide a reliable internet service that will not get disrupted by any future political changes. Last year, the ruling party of Bangladesh suspended internet and text messaging services during the riots. The interim government says Starlink's satellite-based technology would reduce the potential for government-imposed disruptions.
Spain's leftist government has unveiled a draft bill that would criminalize AI-generated sexual images and videos of a person's face or body without their consent. In a statement, the government said that the bill is part of a broader effort to protect young people from the dangers of digital technology and ensure their right to privacy. Well, according to reports, the proposed law will mandate smartphones and tablet makers to install free pre-activated parental controls on their devices. The drafted bill will also require online influencers to implement age verification for their audiences. Now, the move comes amid a series of disturbing incidents in Spain, where AI was used to generate and distribute fake nude images of underage girls.
Instagram is rolling out a new program to fast-track moderation reports made by school districts. Meta's Instagram is introducing a schools partnership program that will enable US school districts to directly report potentially violating posts and accounts. Once enrolled, the school's report will receive automatic priority with regular status updates provided by Instagram. The program requires schools to have an Instagram account, post which the school's account will be provided with a profile banner to indicate that they're an official platform partner, and the partnership program will be available to all middle and high schools in the US. And in a landmark decision, World Athletics will introduce mandatory testing for anyone entering female competitions to verify their biological sex.
Well, World Athletics chief Sebastian Coe says that the step is necessary to protect the integrity of female events.
The move comes 2 years after World Athletics banned transgender women from competing in female events. Sebastian Coe said that cheek swab tests will be used to determine the biological sex of the athlete.
The test would seek to verify if someone has transitioned to a female after going through male puberty or if they had differences of sex or development, well, commonly known as DSD, which provides testosterone advantages. Athletes would only need to take this test once in their careers. The test will look for the SRY gene, which in part forms the male Y chromosome.
Pre-clearance testing will be for athletes to be able to compete in the female category. The process is very straightforward, frankly, very clear, and it's an important one. And we need to look. We will look for a testing provider. We will work on the timelines, and the test will only need to be done once in the career life of an athlete. So we're very clear, and that was agreed today in council.
No timeline has officially been set, but Coe hopes to have kits in place before World Championships in Tokyo this September. Coe believes that the test will be able to stand up to legal scrutiny as well.
We've been to the Court of Arbitration on our DSD regulations. They've been upheld, and they've again been upheld after appeal. So we will doggedly protect the female category, and we'll do whatever is necessary to do it, and we're not just talking about it.
Remember, Coe lost the IOC president election to Christy Coventry, which means he will remain World Athletics chief till 2027. All right, now let's shift our focus to the world of entertainment, where Hollywood's beloved Keira Knightley, known for iconic movies like Pride and Prejudice and Atonement, turns 40 today.
As the global star celebrates this milestone, let's dive into some lesser-known facts about Keira Knightley. Now, born on March 26th, of course, in 1985, a journey began at just 12 years old when she landed the role of Sabe in Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. She shot to fame with the 2002 hit Bend It Like Beckham, which laid the foundation for what would become an extraordinary career.
With undeniable talent and infectious charm, the 40-year-old has delivered several standout performances over her career, spanning more than 3 decades. But it was her role as Elizabeth Swann in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise that made her a box office sensation. She fought her way through the high seas in the big-budget, crowd-pleasing adventure.
Life in the spotlight hasn't always been easy. The British actor has been vocal about the intense public scrutiny she faced, especially regarding her body and weight. She revealed that the constant speculation about her having an eating disorder was deeply traumatic. At just 22, the pressure led to a mental breakdown, prompting her to seek therapy.
Well, despite the challenges, Keira Knightley remains one of Hollywood's biggest stars, with an estimated net worth of $80 million. The Black Dove's actor continues to be one of the highest paid figures in the industry.
Knightley is set to star in Simon Stone's Netflix thriller, The Woman in Cabin 10. She plays a journalist who witnesses a shocking incident, a passenger being thrown overboard during a luxury cruise. Sharing the screen with Guy Pearce, the film is already generating buzz, with its premiere expected this autumn. Fans are excited to see how this new chapter unfolds.
Are you a fan of The Last of Us series? If yes, our next story is for you. Ahead of the show's highly anticipated second season release, Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey walked the red carpet at Hollywood's iconic TCL Chinese Theatre for the show's star-studded premiere. Here's more.